You are listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willy.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys, for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
We are in our happy place, talking CFL football, the first episode of 2022, and quite honestly, anything rather than talking about anything that's going on in the real world right now, it is pretty good. It's the Rouge Radio podcast powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. My name is Robert Dalton, and joining me right across the virtual table is Tony Allen. Tony, how's it going, my man?
It is so good to be talking something, again, not like world events, something you get to lose yourself in and just have fun with. And I've got the Olympics on the big screen in the living room, and I'm ready to go with a whole new, even setup for 2022. But maybe that's something that's more for when we kick off a season.
Yeah, you're sounding pretty crisp. You want to tell everybody that might care that Tony upgraded some equipment.
I did, a brand new laptop, which is more like my wife's new edition, but she said I could record my podcast on her laptop, so that's fine. I'm not recording the show through an iPad anymore, and I'm not doing it through an iPad earbuds with a microphone. I bought a fancy microphone 3 years ago, but then my iPad crapped out and I never got to use this nice fancy microphone. So I know you've upgraded your system in the last couple of years, and now I finally caught up. So it only took us about 9 years to get our stuff together here and put together a really pro show. The only thing, and you can't see because we only do audio, we don't do video. At the last minute, I realized I didn't have a good set of headphones, so I'm using my son's Pikachu headphones to broadcast it. So we're not totally pro, but a little bit of fun. As I'm not even joking, I am wearing Pikachu headphones.
Not gonna lie, I was using my daughters, not just my oldest daughters, my youngest daughters, and she had I don't know, some kind of Dora/unicorn headphones, and I was using it until I decided to upgrade and be like, hey, wait a minute, my Galaxy earbuds, which are Bluetooth, can connect to to my laptop, so I can actually use I'm pretty much wireless.
There you go.
I'm talking to you. But I miss the feeling of having a unicorn headphone attached to my head.
There you go.
Now everybody is not tuning in. Well, at first I just envisioned that they were going to be looking professional, but one of them has Pikachu and the other one admitted to wearing a unicorn. I give up. How was your holidays? Last time we talked was post Grey Cup, as I was still getting drunk. It's been a while, about a month and a half. You enjoy your holidays, New Year?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Everything about the time off was fantastic. I'm actually, I wouldn't say in an extended time off, but I am in school. Right now, it is my final time having to go to school since becoming an electrician and leaving radio 7 years ago. So 7 years after my 4-year apprenticeship started, I'm going to try and get my journeyman ticket as an electrician. So wish me luck. Like I said, it's year 7 of my 4-year electrical apprenticeship.
Yeah, we were. I shouldn't say, because we don't schedule these. Most of these podcasts, most of these episodes is pretty much the night of or the night before, and I'll be like, "Hey, you up for a show?" And it's yay or nay. And I thought, okay, you know what? Last week, I'll give him at least 24 hours notice. He's a busy guy. Send him an. Yeah, you were preparing for your for your last exam, so I'm assuming that went well.
No,
And then,
it wasn't the last exam. I just went at the beginning of January. You just happened to get me on a weekend where on the Tuesday I had a physical lab exam for PLCs, they're called, programmable logistic controls, and then I had another big written exam portion of that on the Wednesday. So it was a heavy week for exams. Luckily this week I think I only have one, so it was I figured I had time to sneak it in, and it was a little not so heavy topic, so it was easier to get a show in tonight.
Good. Before we get way off track, because this is a CFL podcast, not an electrician / Pikachu / describe what kind of headphones you're wearing podcast. Quick email before we get into the meats and potatoes of our podcast, or this week's episode. Darlene from Yorkton chimes in and she says, Tony, how insufferable has Dalts been since the Bombers have won back-to-back Grey Cups?
Well, like Dalts said, though, we haven't talked since the Grey Cup, so I missed the brunt of the gloating, just what I see on Facebook and Twitter. And so luckily I can say that it hasn't been too bad, because this is the first show we've had since the break, so it wasn't horrible.
All right, enough of that. Let's talk about the 2021 Grey Cup, shall we? No, I think I handled it a little bit more civil than I wanted to. Like I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to ride this for until kickoff of 2022, and then I think it kind of just really just went away. Like the feeling of, oh my God, I can't believe they went back to back, and yeah. And then,
I'd have to imagine that everything was probably released in 2019 when 22 years of frustration, or 22 years of angst and losing and never being there, and probably all went out, and it's the second time around you'd probably used up all your A material, and the relief was gone, so it wasn't as bad as the original drought buster.
Well, the problem with the 2019, I had a horrible migraine that weekend. In fact, maybe a couple days leading up to it. So I was happy. I wasn't, I was conscious enough, but every touchdown, every sack, every turnover they had in that game, I just couldn't really celebrate it like I normally would, because every time I felt like I was going to fall asleep because I couldn't open my eyes that much. And we had people over, and I felt like the worst, guy that was the worst host of a Grey Cup party. And so when they came back and won it 2 years ago, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say 2 years later, but almost 2 months ago, it was like, oh my God. But, the feeling wasn't the same, right? The Bombers were legit supposed to win that game. Whereas, the 2019, it was complete, it was like, okay, I just wanted to win because, the end of drought, but I didn't even expect them to win, not much win, but win in the method that they did. And so when they won that one, it was like, I went off on Twitter. It's like, hey, where are your 1990 jokes now, bitches? And now it's like, after the 2021 Grey Cup, it's like, hey, where are your 2019 jokes? Oh, wait, nobody made a 2019 joke. That's right. Yeah, because back to back. So it's kind of like, it's a completely different feeling. But when they end that three-peat, I might be really, really insufferable if they get that way. All on another topic of that before we get into all of the off-season discussion. Also, where is it? Dean from Medicine Hat questions whether or not the CFL will be boring if the Bombers do three-peat. And I'm thinking, no. And I'll let you answer that first. Obviously you said no, but what's your reasoning behind it?
It's just there's nothing boring about a dynasty. Maybe the other teams get sick of watching you win, but I mean, you just don't see dynasties. And when was the last time the Canadian Football League had a triple Grey Cup winner? You can't be. You could be annoyed by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers winning again, But I mean, tell me that doesn't create the opposite, but an amazing storyline. You don't have to like the Bombers, but tell me every eye wouldn't be on that Winnipeg Blue Bomber team with a chance to do something unimaginable. And for all the jokes of the Canadian Football League, well, how hard is it to win the Grey Cup when there's only 9 teams? Well, ask the Blue Bombers prior to 2019. Ask the current Hamilton Tiger Cats how hard it is to win a Grey Cup. Ask the Saskatchewan Rough Riders fans after 120 years how hard it is to win a Grey Cup. So, I mean, I think the excitement of the possibility, the unheard of, just how long did we have to wait to get back-to-back Grey Cup champions, much less three-peat? I think it makes for an amplified excitement heading into the season. Can a team of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers caliber actually pull it off?
Yeah, it creates a storyline because, like you mentioned, having a three-peat in the the 2020s, it's something that hasn't been done since the 80s when the Edmonton Football Club did it, right? So there's that, right? Like, and you touched on it. It's like, well, people are going to say that it's very difficult. I mean, in a 9-team league, you can have you can create a Grey Cup contender just by going through free agency. We'll talk more about the Ottawa Redblacks because of legal tampering period. But Winnipeg just said, hey, you know what? F it. You can't just go through free agency all the time. We're just going to do this through scout correctly, draft correctly, and then occasionally add the occasional free agent. And then they did that twice. Now they're trying to do it on the third time. On the opposite side of the spectrum, isn't that the storyline? Who's going to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Who's going to stop them from three-peating? Calgary's putting together a good roster. Saskatchewan's hosting. They're going to do it. BC, Edmonton, Ottawa, they're doing whatever they could do to at least make the playoffs. And we all know, once you make the playoffs, anything could happen, right? There's that storyline. Who's going to be that team? Hamilton's is always going to be up in that topic of conversation. So it's anything but boring. The storylines are just more amplified because of a potential three-peat. So as from a Bomber standpoint, from a Bomber fan standpoint, do I want them to three-peat? Sure. Am I going to be angry if they don't? No, because it creates a little bit more eyes on the league itself from all 9 CFL fan bases because, hey, potentially, it's almost like 8 teams have joined forces to be like, hey, let's stop this dynasty from happening, right? I mean, it's just amazing. I think it's just amplified more than anything.
Well, it's going to be the headline going into every single week. Let's say Winnipeg opens up the season with a win, and people are going to say it's the same old Winnipeg Blue Bombers, depending on how dominant it is. And if they win again in week 2 and how fast every single week for the next 16 weeks becomes about the destiny, the dynasty, the dominance of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Like, we are not going to escape that in 2022. So if you loathe the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, no matter what, 2022 is going to be all about it. Probably even more so if Winnipeg opens up with 2 losses in a row. Suddenly the dynasty is in jeopardy. Like, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to be under the most high-powered microscope any team in the CFL has had in a long time. And I include the Calgary Stampeders that were put together well in those years. Like, even in the 4 years that Bo Levi Mitchell seemed to take the Stampeders to the Grey Cup, I don't know if they had that microscope that this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team is going to have, because they still look strong, which we'll cover our predictions for this team, but they still look strong and they look dominant, and they're in this position to pull off back-to-back championships. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's you mentioned the Calgary Stampeders just because this situation might be good for Calgary, for a team like Calgary, right? Because they're used to being the front runners, right? Like, everybody's saying, okay, well, I'm going to protect Calgary to finish first in the West. And then lo and behold, what happened? everybody was like, okay, well, let Winnipeg win the West. Winnipeg, it's their cup to lose. And then all of a sudden, it's like a snap of the fingers, Calgary went on a winning streak. Like, there was a point in the season last year where we were like, oh, Calgary's going to miss the playoffs. Same with Edmonton. It's going to be the first time that both teams are going to miss the playoffs. And then just Calgary just snapped their fingers and be like, no, we're not going to miss. And they were a couple of missed field goals away from meeting Winnipeg in the Western Final last year. I don't think they would have won that game, but I mean that's a topic for a different conversation kind of thing.
And we've already covered that too. We talked. I think that was a hot take one week. Is like, can you beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? How do you beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Like, we weren't even talking about teams in the best position. We were just like, how is it even possible to beat this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team? Like, they were just so dominant.
Yeah. All right, let's get on. First, let's get a shout out to our sponsors at manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code Rouge at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. And use the code Rouge. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. And also, by the way, let's say hello to a new affiliate over at betus.com. Yeah, so if you go to betus.com, there is a promo code at join125, and then happy betting. Any dollar that you win, we kind of get a little kickback from that. So get to stepping and get to winning. Single betting is legal in Canada, so just in time for the Super Bowl. My Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know, Tony, if you follow the NFL enough, but I am a happy camper. This is the first time in a long time where my two favorite football teams are actually winning the championship, or on the verge of winning the championship. So I'm a little happy camper, my chair. Let's get to our off-season maneuvers, and we'll start off with the BC Lions. And I think there's only one roster move that really took Twitter by storm, and that's the retirement of Michael Reilly. First off, did it not come as a surprise to you? I mean, you knew that it was a possibility based off the last 2 years, but it almost kind of seemed like people were talking about it, but nobody took it seriously because Michael Reilly is a tough SOB. And then lo and behold, a couple of weeks ago, he announces his retirement. And the CFL is, for the first time since 2011, is without Michael Reilly. Your thoughts on that one?
I don't think I was ready for it. I think I would be lying if I said it didn't catch me off guard. And, he is an older quarterback and things were rough in British Columbia, but there always seems like there's a little bit of talk during the season. And when you watch games, there's always that chatter about, is this the last time we're going to see Michael Reilly in the Canadian Football League? So I didn't feel like there was a lot of that chatter. And he still seemed so important to the BC Lions, but there was injury problems last year. So now that I've known, it's not surprising maybe he would take that route again because injuries were taking its toll. But I would not have thought in this offseason, I would have assumed we were seeing Michael Reilly in the CFL in 2022. I wouldn't have even questioned it, but you know what? He made the call, and good for him. It was a treat for every Canadian and American that watches the Canadian Football League, or wherever in the world you watch the Canadian Football League. It was a treat for us as fans to watch him operate the way he did, the way he came into BC and just caught our attention right away. Did great in Edmonton. Returned back to BC and gave us a lot of drama and excitement. He wasn't able to turn it around like maybe we thought he was going to, but I think there's no question he is a Hall of Famer. I think if you would even try to argue he isn't a Hall of Famer, you probably deserve a slap in the head because it just, I don't know how you could see his body of work and success in his entire career and tell me that he doesn't deserve it.
I don't know if you just brought that subject out of nowhere or if you're referencing Rod Peterson on Twitter, questioning whether or not Michael Reilly was going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback not because of his lack of stats, because the stats back it up, but his lack of Grey Cup wins as a starter. He's got 2 Grey Cups, one as a backup or the third stringer in BC, and of course what he did with Edmonton in 2015.
Yeah, that's such a stupid argument. Like, just an absolutely stupid argument because, I mean, if Grey Cups are purely your ticket to the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, like, seriously, what quarterback in the last 20 years is eligible for Hall of Fame status then? Like, if you're going to disregard a Grey Cup or need more than one Grey Cup, like, seriously, if that's the criteria, is having multiple more Grey Cups as a starter in the CFL, going back to like the mid 90s, who does that give you? Like, seriously, who does it give you? Ricky Ray and what's left? Maybe Zach Collaros now? Is Zach Collaros a Hall of Fame quarterback? Anthony
Not
Calvillo?
first ballot. I mean, Zach Collaros would eventually get in there. I just like you look at their stats between Reilly and Collaros.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, you'd be hard pressed to say that anybody's going to argue against Michael Reilly of the two of being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, that's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, but in the last 30 years, who are your multiple Grey Cup champion quarterbacks? Who are they? Henry Burris and Ricky Ray and Anthony Calvillo, and that's it?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a ridiculous argument.
Poor Kevin Glenn is now going to get in there.
Yeah, right. Like,
Kevin Glenn will...
I don't know. I get it's kind of like he's trying to get attention, and that's what you have to do. It's kind of like, oh, I need attention. I'm going to suggest Michael Reilly isn't a Hall of Famer, even though how idiotic it is, but I'm going to get attention, and people are going to read my blog, and they're going to watch my program, and at least I'll get attention. And it's like, he has to know how stupid that argument is. But, I mean, he needs attention, right? We've done it too on this show, said ridiculous things for the sake of getting attention, but the idea that because Michael Reilly only has one starting quarterback Grey Cup is just asinine.
The one reason why I'll say that that's completely asinine is as football fans and people who cover football for whatever market it is in, we always say that football is the ultimate team sport, right? Like, you always say that. Like, it's more of a team sport than hockey or basketball or baseball.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, this guy does not get into the Hall of Fame because his teams around him sucked. Like, are we going to completely ignore that the 2013 Edmonton Football Club was crap? Like, the 2014, 2015, and to an extent the 2016 clubs had better chances at the Grey Cup than the other years. And in 2017 was his best year statistically. And he won a playoff game. And had Jason Moss actually said to try to score a touchdown as opposed to a field goal, we might be talking Edmonton versus Toronto in the 2017 Grey Cup. I mean that's just one of those what ifs kind of thing.
Yeah. And then here's the thing: is like if Grey Cup champions is where you're going to set your bar, then in the last 25 years, Henry Burris is the greatest greatest quarterback in CFL history because he won 3. So if Mike Reilly can't even get to the Hall of Fame because 1 is nothing, then Henry Burris with 3 is the greatest quarterback the Canadian Football League has seen since Doug Flutie. And you can't, and that argument is undisputable because you need multiple Grey Cups, and almost no quarterback in the last 20 years has multiple Grey Cups.
Dieter Brock, one of the biggest quarterbacks in the 80s, in the Hall of Fame. No Grey Cup.
Yeah.
No Grey Cup. So, yeah. And we all know that Kevin Glenn is going to get into the Hall of Fame at one point, right? Like, that's... Like, he's not going to be... He's probably going to go in, like, maybe in his last year. I don't even know if there's a last year of eligibility for CFL Hall of Fame or Canadian Football Hall of Fame.
Put him in as a builder. Put him as a builder then something. Because who built the CFL more than Kevin Glenn? He's a builder.
Put him in as under the insurance The policy, the insurance policy category.
Yeah.
Other moves that the BC Lions have made, obviously they made some big moves by re-signing receivers Lucky Whitehead and Brian Burnham, and there has been some. Obviously, we're recording this on Sunday, February 6th, and last day of legal tampering period. Looks like that they have acquired the rights to Louis Purifoy, probably one of the underrated defensive players coming out of Saskatchewan, and also looks like that they have tabled a $250,000 contract to receiver Kenny Lawler. Doesn't look like that has been accepted at this point, but I'm guessing that there's going to be some time for Lawler and Winnipeg to maybe have some kind of negotiations. But the one thing I'm taking away from all of this in BC, is the same thing that we've noticed in the last couple of years, that they are not committed to the running game and they are not committed to blocking for a quarterback. Therefore, load him up with all the weapons because he's going to be running for his life because they do not have an adequate pass blocking scheme in BC. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong.
No, it's pretty accurate. And like you said, they just took the biggest hit you could take at the quarterback position. As much as we love that Canadian kid that came in and picked up a win at the end of the season, it's going to be a hell of a lot of different scenario for that guy when the games start next year. So, yeah, some big names. I think Purifoy, I have like 6 names of the CFL free agents that I'm probably keeping my eye on to go within the first hour or so, and he was definitely on my list of 6 where I'd probably pick to be gone immediately or close to immediately of free agency opening up. So it's interesting. I didn't know that BC had talked to him yet, so that I was just learning that when you told me.
That's right. I am Tony's version of Justin Dunk.
There you go.
He gets all his news from me. Moving on to your neck of the woods, the Calgary Stampeders. Most notably, the Calgary Stampeders have always been their, in-house kind of retooling. Who cares if a team is going to go east, because it looks like most of them are going to go to Toronto again. One of the biggest news that we saw is Royce Mechie traded to Toronto in exchange for linebacker Cameron Judge. Both players have agreed to a 1-year contract extension, so Judge is officially a Calgary Stampeder for the year 2022. A couple of things that kind of that show up on here is good news for Calgary, because Calgary is staying the course with what they have been doing over the last couple of years, or even the last few years, is don't go balls deep in the free agents. You re-sign your own players, allow the players that are leaving, you're basically allowing them to negotiate themselves out of a spot in Calgary and into a bigger contract, and then possibly hinder that new team. This is what Calgary's always been known to do, and it's actually been pretty decent. They have a good track record with that. But the one thing that kind of speaks out for me in Calgary is, and this might actually ruffle a couple of feathers for people from Calgary fans, is that this Stampeders team really hasn't been hot in the playoffs the last couple of years. In 2019, they got their ass kicked by Winnipeg en route to the Grey Cup. They had a couple of missed field goals and a couple of costly turnovers from Bo Levi Mitchell in the Western Semi against Saskatchewan this past year. And they're running it. It looks like they're not retooling that. They are just kind of status quo. And I think if Calgary really wants to get ahead, they may need to make a decision with their quarterbacks, and they might need to maybe make a giant splash in the free agency, because what they have been doing in the last couple of years, it hasn't been working. And I know you being a Stampeder fan, you might actually, that might kind of rub you the wrong way, but just looking at what they've been doing, it just seems to be not working, at least when you take in the last couple of years into consideration. But I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's definitely been noticeable, the decline in production from Bo Levi Mitchell. However, you want to take that, and there's people in the Stampeder fandom that will get their backs up over that one. But you can't deny that he hasn't been the same Bo Levi Mitchell. There is no racking up points like there used to be, and even then, the Stampeders, half of the points they were racking up came up on defense, and maybe something is focusing on the defense for the Calgary Stampeders this offseason is what's going to help the Stampeders be what they are offensively, because they're not spending as much time on the field as they have these last couple of years, and you're starting to see the wear and tear on Bo Levi Mitchell's body as he seems to be going out with injuries more frequently than he has in the past. They just, like you mentioned before we covered the Stamps, kind of swapping defensive players, but I think that's where you need to see the change for the Calgary Stampeders. The biggest is to be that suffocating defense, ball hawk defense that is going to go out there, get their two downs, and then get off the field again and let Bo Levi Mitchell work. They don't have a crowded quarterback situation right now. It's still Bo Levi Mitchell's team, but depending how much they believe in Mayer going into this season, and we'll see what happens with the new kid whose name escapes me right now, but there's no use talking about him until he even shows a glimpse of anything in training camp. We'll have to assume it's still Bo Levi Mitchell's team. And for me, the Calgary Stampeders, like you mentioned, aren't a team that even needs free agency, much less goes into it or uses it. But I would agree with you that maybe this is the first time Huff needs to swallow his pride and actually go out and try to buy a couple of players, because again, buying entire teams in free agency never works. We've seen that fail for the Tiger Cats like on 3 separate occasions, going back to Printers, then Moss, then rinse and repeat. But maybe this time the Calgary Stampeders have maybe prided themselves on not having to do that. But I think this is the offseason. They should probably consider it, because if you can get that defense back to where it was, maybe it kind of ignites your offense again.
Yeah, and we're not saying that, hey, listen, go out and spend millions on one sort. Like, just one or two. I don't think this team's bad as it is. I just don't think the team is where it thinks it is at this point. And I think maybe if they go maybe a couple of players here and there, because generally their free agent acquisitions are depth guys, and it's usually on day 2 or 3 when they do it, right? So I think they just need to alter that. This team isn't far off, but I just don't think they are where they think they are and where they need to be. Let's go far up north to the Edmonton Football Club, the Edmonton Elks. The biggest thing, actually, that we could probably talk about is the hiring of Chris Jones as their head coach and general manager. We could just maybe talk about what's going to happen in 3 years when he bolts to another team, or even before that. But this situation, if you ask Saskatchewan Roughrider fans, they'll tell you Chris Jones is a PR nightmare, almost. Just based on his lack of, I don't want to say a lack of accountability, but his lack of following the rules. And if there's one team that can't afford bad PR off the field, it might be Edmonton. And, with the issues with Joey Moss and everything surrounding that, I'm not going to say Chris Jones is not going to fix things. It's just kind of like you're, maybe putting a Band-Aid on a scar and then going into a swimming pool, and that Band-Aid is not exactly water resistant. That's what it seems like to me. The hire itself, well, Chris Jones, the last time he was in Edmonton, he won, and then he bolted. Based on the moves that he's made thus far, acquiring Tony Washington with a trade, the biggest news is getting Adarius Bowman out of retirement, and then signing Emmanuel Arsenault, and then bringing Caleb Hawley out of relevancy. That Edmonton offense, I don't know what to say about it. Defensively, Chris Jones is going to be a defense-first team. I question what the offense is going to look like coming out, but he's bringing Steve McAdoo, who is a pretty decent offensive mind. I just don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the weapons that he's given him, because it's not looking too good. What do you think?
The problem with Chris Jones is he is an excellent head coach. He wins. That's what he does. And there's nothing really I could doubt about how Chris Jones wins. He does. Calgary Stampeders fans saw it. Argonauts fans saw it before he became a head coach. The Elks were rewarded with Chris Jones on their team. The Riders were rewarded with Chris Jones on the team. He leaves and he comes back. The Argonauts add him. And next thing you know, we're talking about the Toronto Argonauts potentially being Grey Cup champions when nobody in the world would have taken that guess except maybe the truest of bluest diehard Argonauts fans. So from a professional standpoint, this was a move the Elks had to make. You need to win. You need to erase last year out of everyone's memory, and you found the guy that can do it. But like you said, he is also a train wreck, and he will accept an invitation to every fight he's invited to, and you have no idea where that's going to get you. He may not turn that team around now, but he's going to build the good defense. He just needs somebody to take care of that offense, and to me, there's no question Chris Jones will turn the Edmonton Elks around. And how soon it will be? Well, again, looking at that list of his fixes, we'll see what happens. Because as much fun as we can make of bringing back Bowman or bringing in Arsenault, it's Chris Jones. I find it difficult to. I can laugh at the moves because they're weird, but I mean, Chris Jones wins. It's so hard to ignore that. As much as we might dislike him, like it's what he does. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'll make my fun now. We had our fun on Twitter. Everyone did. And again, who knows if, I would put $50 down that he never sees year 3 of that contract. But Edmonton might not be worried about making year 3 of that contract. They just might be happy having a competitive football team by as early as 2023.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you're a team, or if you're a fan of a team that just going through the missing the playoffs the way that they did. Going through the East the year before that or the season before that, and then missing the playoffs and having everything off sealed and whatnot, you probably could not care if you win the Grey Cup and then the guy who brought that to you just bolts or retires or what have you. That's probably not in the forefront of your mind. You just want the Grey Cup ASAP. Let's move to the Green Province, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They re-signed a few of their players, but I think the biggest news out of Saskatchewan, Riderville, is who they didn't bring back. Micah Johnson going out east. That's not 100% yet, because obviously free agent frenzy starts officially on Tuesday. They're not bringing back Micah Johnson. They're not bringing back Ed Gainey. They're not bringing back Lucius Purifoy. And I think I'm missing another, but I could be wrong. But regardless, is that it's John Ryan, the punter. John Ryan's not coming back, and it's not necessarily who they have re-signed. It's who they are allowing to go in free agents. And I've been voicing this opinion, and I'll say this: Rider fans who are listening to this right now, be happy with who you're not bringing back, with the exception of Purifoy. Be happy you're not bringing back John Ryan. Be happy you're not bringing back Ed Gainey. Be happy that you re-signed Duke Williams for an extra year. However, I will say this. You still haven't loaded up on your offensive line. Cody Fajardo could be the nicest guy on the planet by restructuring his contract so that you could re-sign Duke Williams, but you still have to protect him. And now you've lost William Powell as well, which, again, that's one of those things where it's okay, you'll be fine, but now you're going to have to is that going to be Morrow? Is he going to take over that? Because if it is, I don't think you'll find a better blocking back than guys like William Powell or guys like Andrew Harris. And we'll talk about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in a second here. But Rider fans who are listening to this, who are thinking I'm very pro, and this is coming from a Bomber fan, you're better off with the guys that you lost, but you still have to get that offensive line filled out. And you might get it figured out through free agency, because we're only talking about the stuff that have actually been kind of leaked at this time. I don't know if there's any available offensive linemen that could actually fix your problems, but there's still time. But as of now, you're fine with the guys that you've lost that are not coming back. You just need to retool that offensive line. So take that as you wish. Tony, your thoughts on Saskatchewan?
They're definitely going to be a team to watch in free agency, I think, because they are hosting the Grey Cup. And, I mean, the last time they hosted it, they won it, and I'm sure they enjoy that and they want to do it again. And it'll be interesting to watch what moves what they make. And I mean, you were pretty pro making the moves anyways, and I mean, it's the same story every year with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Is every player they got rid of was a legitimate reason to get rid of them, and everyone they replace them with was 100 times better than the guy they dropped that everyone loves. So they'll be happy with whatever moves they do make. That's, I guess, a good thing about the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Every move they make is the best move humanly possible to make in the off season. So they'll bounce back from these moves, and it will be interesting to watch. There's going to be a lot of pressure on them to be in the dance when the time comes. So I am interested to see which direction they take the Saskatchewan Roughriders in 2022, because I wasn't a fan of how they looked last year. I thought they were a 500 football club. They looked 500 football clubbish, and they didn't look like anyone. They didn't look any more scary than the Calgary Stampeders looked, and the Calgary Stampeders didn't look scary. They didn't look better than, runaway better than anyone in the East. So if they want to be in the Grey Cup at the end of this year, they're gonna have to tweak that football club. So we'll see what happens. I won't say that they haven't done it yet, because free agency hasn't started and there's still a lot of time until the opening kickoff, but it will be interesting to watch what they do and how they maneuver their team going through the season.
All right, let's go east to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the back-to-back reigning Grey Cup champions, who have been kind of ticking off, the guys who were pending free agents, locking them up. I think the biggest names that remain available for free agency is receiver Kenny Lawler, running back Brady Oliveira, safety Brandon Alexander, and of course Steve Richardson. But the big name that has made some waves is Winnipeg native Andrew Harris, and I guess that is the big news. I've been vocal on this as well, and this comes from a business standpoint. I'm not opposed to Andrew Harris coming back. If you're a Bomber fan, you should not be opposed to that. He gives you, obviously an extra block for Zach Collaros, and he's still somewhat effective. I mean, look at what he did in the Western Final against Saskatchewan. But what I said, and I said this on Twitter, is that are you risking to bring back Andrew Harris, who will be 35 years old by the time the season starts? Are you risking to bring back Andrew Harris for 1 year and lose out on young running backs like Brady Oliveira and Johnny Augustine? Augustine re-signed for 2 years, so that's a good thing. But if you're Bombers, if you're the Bomber management, you're talking, hey, listen, we want to bring you back, but this is the role. It's going to be minimal, and you're not going to like the pay grade based off that role. If you're Bomber management, that you stand firm on that, and if he doesn't like it, he chooses elsewhere. He could still go, but he's, like I said, he's 35. He was oft injured last year. He missed 6 games, or I'm sorry, 7 games because he kind of played half of one. Andrew Harris in 2021 was different than the Andrew Harris in 2019. It's going to be radically different not seeing Andrew Harris in the backfield, but in like every sport, you always have to go younger. And in this case, the Bombers actually have younger. They have 2 younger. And I believe one of them is actually better in his prime now than what Andrew Harris probably is going to be able to give you should he remain a Bomber in 2022. But your thoughts on that one before we move on?
No, you're right. Welcome to the Canadian Football League. If you can get younger and cheaper, you do it. There's been a lot of football players bigger and more famous and more legendary than Andrew Harris who have just been walked away on by their football clubs because their team could get younger and they could get cheaper. And it's not personal, Andrew Harris. I don't have a lot of beefs with the Canadian Football League. That's probably the knock against me is I have CFL colored glasses on for the majority of my life. But my knock is how they treat the legends at the end of their careers. And unfortunately, with the financial situation, you walk away from these players just out of the blue if you can get younger, faster, and of course, absolutely cheaper. And I think Andrew Harris is just going to be the victim of that mentality.
Yeah, and it's going to suck, especially if he's going to have a chip on his shoulder and he goes elsewhere. A couple of places that have come up as far as where his landing spots. A lot of people have been joked about Saskatchewan, BC, and maybe Ottawa is a potential landing spot. Although Ottawa maybe not so much right now because we'll talk more about that later. The Hamilton Tiger Cats. Runners up to the Grey Cup 2 years in a row, the longest active Grey Cup drought going back to 1999. The biggest moves that they made, obviously, comes in the player that they are not going to be bringing back, and that is Brandon Banks. First off, your thoughts on Brandon Banks no longer being a Tiger Cat?
Again, I feel it's the same Andrew Harris conversation, and I think we even wrapped up 2021 by saying I think change is imminent in Hamilton. I don't know if you said that or I said it, but it feels like a topic that came up because this is another back-to-back loss in the Grey Cup for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I think change is imminent. That core was not doing anything. They obviously suffered another loss that I'm sure you're going to bring up here in a second, but just staying with Speedy B, that guy's going to land on his feet. He's not going to fade away into nothing. But it definitely makes me a little concerned about where this Tiger Cats team is going to be this season.
Yeah, and one of the biggest. I think I remember going into or wrapping up the 2021 season. We were talking about what now for Hamilton, and I listed off 3 names: Brandon Banks, Chris Van Zyl, and Simone Lawrence. Well, the Tiger Cats said, F Dalts, you don't know what you're talking about. They brought back Chris Van Zyl, and they brought back Simone Lawrence. And Brandon Banks was just one of those mutual parting of ways. And it's like, okay, well, if it was me, I don't know if Brandon Banks would have been one of those 3 to be let go. I would have done it was all 3 because something had to have changed. But again, I don't know lickety split apparently. I don't even know if Brandon Banks. I figured that if Brandon Banks was going to be on a CFL roster in 2022, that would have happened by now. Obviously, I think there's going to be some dominoes falling with free agent frenzy coming up on Tuesday, February 8th. But it's going to be interesting to see how that lands with Brandon Banks. Most notably, the Tiger Cats made the decision as to which quarterback they want to go with. Dane Evans and Jeremiah Mazzoli, who, and I guess we'll talk about that when we go through Ottawa, has landed in Ottawa, among other things. One of the biggest free agent acquisitions, although, is the BC Lions released Lamar Durant. Durant landed in Hamilton, but I even think a bigger news than that is Micah Johnson in Hamilton. Now, Hamilton Tiger Cats were number 1 against the run in 2021. They are going to add Michael Johnson alongside the names like Dylan Wynn or Julian Hauser. This is going to be a scary defense to run. I don't think you'll be able to, at least up the middle, with that defense. And if you're not able to run it up the middle, you just might be a deer in the headlights kind of thing in regarding to that defense. But first off, they made the decision. Did the Hamilton Tiger Cats make the proper decision by going with Dane Evans over Jeremiah Mazzoli?
Oh, the way that the season went last year, it looks like the answer is no, they did not make the right decision. But maybe this was more Mazzoli's decision to decide he doesn't want to be a part of that roller coaster anymore. Although it's odd to want to go to the Red Blacks right now before you even see what they're building. Or maybe part of the tampering process was telling Mazzoli what they're going to try to bring in to help him out. But I don't know. I don't think Dane Evans is the better quarterback between the two. But we'll see what happens. If you're right about the defense and Evans gets to operate all game long because they're on the field, then maybe he can look like the quarterback that caught all of our attentions in 2019.
As we focus our attention on the Toronto Argonauts, and I'm looking at who they brought back, and I tell you, I think we're in for a little bit of deja vu. I think Toronto's going to go balls deep into free agents again this year, and we saw how that worked out for them this past year, and I don't think it's going to work again either this year. But the biggest news is the potential acquisition of rush end Jagarrett Davis out of Hamilton. I know everybody's going to say, well, Jagarrett Davis has gone to the Grey Cup, 5 years in a row? So maybe that's Toronto's MO. Get the guy who always goes to the Grey Cup. In this case, I don't like Toronto's offense. Mcleod, Bethel, Thompson still at the helm, although they didn't really have that much of an option there. It was either him or Trevor Harris, and maybe Mcleod, Bethel, Thompson is a little better option than Trevor Harris at this point in his career. I just don't think that Toronto's in the. They're going to have to do something huge because they're going to have to convince me otherwise that Toronto is going to make a run for Thompson East at this point, because right now it's between Hamilton and, dare I say it, maybe the Montreal Alouettes and then maybe the Ottawa Red Blacks. Like that's a drastic change what we're going to see in Ottawa, and we're going to talk about that. Your thoughts on the Toronto Argonauts before we go to Ottawa? Nope,
Toronto's going to be good because they have Homer Simpson as their quarterback, and he'll kick those kids' asses. That's what Homer does. No offensive line. Who cares? I'm Homer Simpson. Gaping holes in the defense? That doesn't matter. Homer Simpson is quarterbacking that football team. And why would I bet? Bro, get ready, Grimy, because it's going to be a rough East Division again. And I half joke, but Bethel, how does he do it? Explain Bethel Mcleod Thompson to me. He is the Homer Simpson to the Canadian Football League's Frank Grimes. And if you don't get the reference, I'm not explaining it because you suck if you don't get the Grimy reference. So why would I bet against the Toronto Argonauts? As long as Homer Simpson keeps quarterbacking that team, anything is possible. That is what I'm going to call him all season. Welcome to 2022, Bethel Mcleod, or should I say Homer Simpson? Or I was going to say Bethel Mcleod Simpson or Homer Thompson. McLeod Simpson. Oh, it works! It works. Actually, remember that episode where he was going to witness protection, and the guy's like, "Hello, Mr. Thompson." I think he's talking to you. So he is Homer Mcleod Thompson for 2000. Welcome, the Canadian Football League, to the Argonauts starting quarterback, Homer Mcleod Thompson. Or Homer Thompson Simpson. Homer Mcleod Thompson? Whatever. We got our name for the podcast episode. Yeah, Homer Mcleod Thompson. When I stomp on your foot and wink, you throw the ball at the receiver, okay? I think he's talking to you. I'm going to squeeze your hand, and when I do, Homer, you grab the ball. He's talking to you again. Homer Mcleod Thompson.
Okay, let's get to the Ottawa Redblacks. And the Ottawa Redblacks, aside from beating the Edmonton Elks, and of course that one game against the Montreal Alouettes, didn't really do too much in 2021, but they are making a name for it right now. And I'm looking at all the names that they brought back, and they didn't really bring back too many people. Of course, you can't, right? You can't bring back that 2021 roster. They brought back, Abdul Kanay. They also lost their biggest weapon to the NFL, Devontae Dedmon. But I'm just looking to, I'm just trying to figure out because these are not confirmed contract signs, because nothing can be confirmed until February 8th. But if we look for everybody that they're really bringing back, we've got Jeremiah Mazzoli, Eucombre Williams from Calgary, Hunter Stewart, Jake Weineke, Jalen Acklin. I'm trying to think of more names. I'm trying to think about Levi Noel. Like, there's a whole slew of people that are actually going to be physically, 100% confirmed as of Tuesday, February 8th. I'm still not sold that Jeremiah Mazzoli is going to be the guy to turn around this franchise, but it's a definite positive step for the Ottawa Redblacks, who haven't put together a competitive team since 2018. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, holy hell, would I ever like to see a Weineke Mazzoli show in Ottawa? That would definitely make something interesting if they were to pull that off through free agency. But they were such a train wreck last year. Like, to think that you could, I mean, they definitely have to try and go in all in during the free agency list. Like, you don't have to be a genius to think this is the team that needs to go out and try and rebound even more than the Elks did. So, I mean, they did it a couple of years ago. They tried to go all in and have something happen. They just started spending money, but to turn that disaster around, it would be pretty hard. I can't see them being that competitive this year, no matter what they did.
And last on the docket is the Montreal Alouettes, who've been kind of silent. They made a big trade in regards to sending out Tony Washington, and I'm trying to remember who they brought in Mike Moore from the Edmonton Elks in a trade, which I like, because that means the Johnny Manziel trade is actually extended and is still, that trade tree is still alive and well and kicking, and hopefully I can work on that one. But the Montreal Alouettes, they're in a situation where I'm looking at everybody that's available, and I'm looking who the Alouettes haven't brought back. They brought back Weineke, where they have a deal with Weineke to bring him back.
Oh, okay. Well, then there you go. That negates what I said about the Ottawa thing. I was going through. I mean,
it's not confirmed, but they could maybe still pull it off. But again, we'll just assume that unconfirmed means confirmed.
Okay.
But I don't see where, if Montreal's not going to bring back their current pending free agents, I don't see anybody across the board that would make that team better. And I'll stand corrected. I just don't see it. From an outsider stance, I don't know if Montreal is ready to make that that extra step back to normalcy, back to what they were back in the early 2000s and 2010s or what have you. Vernon Adams had to step back. They lost Matthew Schultz. They brought in Dominic Davis, which I don't know why they would do that instead of Matthew Schultz. There might, again, options are available, and you're not making your team better. And at this point, I don't know if you can make your team better with what is available. So, I mean, I'd like to say that Montreal stays status quo and then competes with Hamilton, but right now I think they're fighting with the Toronto Argonauts and holding off the Ottawa Redblacks. I think Redblacks have made a bigger leap towards normalcy than I think the Montreal Alouettes have and potentially will. Your thoughts on that one before we wrap everything up?
And I don't know why I'm so smitten with this Montreal Alouettes team, because after last year, they didn't go in the direction that I had predicted them. So I'm not going to try and say that I'm still smitten with them because they proved me right. They actually seemed to step back a little bit more by the end of the season. But even when you say they didn't do much and they haven't done much, and right now they're going in with the same looking football club, I don't feel like that's bad with this Montreal Alouettes team. I think they just give off that aura of a team. You know, you need a team to win. And again, Kahari Jones, I think to me just looks like one of the most player coach kind of players, the most invested in his guys than any other head coach in the Canadian Football League right now. And I still don't want to sleep on this Alouettes team. There might be some options out there that don't seem great right now that can turn into something good. So I'm not going to be as down on the Alouettes as maybe you are. And I think that there is still room to improve and for Vernon Adams to come back and be better, and that Montreal Alouettes team to be just as competitive in the East as they appeared to be last season.
Yeah, and it's yeah. To me, it's just a matter of like with Saskatchewan, it was the moves that they didn't make made them a better team. With Montreal, it's the moves that they're making or they're not making is making them a worse team. And you better hope that Kahari Jones has a couple of halftime speeches or pregame speeches or postgame speeches, because eventually that kind of coaching, it wears us out pretty quick if you don't have the talent and for that to have an effect. So it's not, I'm anti-Montreal. It's just that right now it's, maybe 2019 was an aberration. Maybe we have to start thinking of, we love the Montreal Alouettes and William Stanback and whatnot. I just, we're maybe we should start talking about maybe the 2018, maybe the 2021 Alouettes are the real Alouettes. As much as we hate to see it, maybe reality is going to set in. I don't know, but I mean, the Montreal Alouettes need to do something come free agency. Maybe a couple more trades to retool that offer or retool that roster, because it's not looking pretty. Before we wrap it up, this is episode 428. Any final thoughts, Tony, before we send it home?
No, actually nothing. I never thought that far ahead. It's our first podcast of 2022, and I just wanted to get through it with all of the equipment new to my setup, actually making it to the end with no dropped calls or weird kind of feedback into it. So I'm glad I made it through, and probably one of the, other than sounding like me, it sounds like I feel like I got the good sound I've been looking for, other than the fact that it is my nasally voice coming through. Maybe I sound more nasally now.
Now we can actually say, hey, we're not doing this via Skype. We're actually in the Rouge Radio studio.
First, you're going to listen. You're going to hear how nasally I am, and they're going to say, "Is Ray Romano doing the Rouge Radio podcast?" Ray Romano, because I'm so I could be the woolly mammoth in the Ice Age movies, because I sound like maybe not that nasally.
Well, it took me a while to get that reference, because you said Ray Romano. I'm thinking Everybody Loves Raymond, and now I've got to be the brother, the big brother.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what was his name?
Robert.
Yeah.
Oh, Robert.
Oh, that'll wrap it up for episode 428. One last thing here before we tee this off here. Free agent friends, this show will be out hopefully Monday the 7th. And if you're keen, if you have the day off, make sure to follow the Canadian Football Countdown on Twitter. They are live streaming CFL free agent talk for about 6 hours. A lot of people within the CFL, the Canadian Football Podcast Network, will be on hand to talk free agencies. Myself, I will be guesting on their show. on 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, and of course again on 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. Maybe making some bold predictions at 10 o'clock, and then maybe finding out and talking about maybe who won free agency on day one of the CFL on Tuesday, February 8th, by the way. I'm on holidays this week, so I actually have a chance to look at Twitter for all day, and I'm going to get the refresh that scrolling on Twitter on my phone is going to get a good workout. For Tony, I'm Dalts. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.